Welcome to Terror Tales. Tonight, we enter the darkest corners of the human mind and the haunted hallways of hospitals that should have stayed closed. These stories are based on real whispers, old records, and the kind of footage no one dares to review twice. One warning: don't watch this alone. Hollow Creek General was built in 1911. It was supposed to be a state-of-the-art facility, but over the decades, it earned another reputation: the place patients go to die, and not just physically. In 1994, a fire gutted the basement ward. Officially, 6 patients and 1 nurse were killed. Unofficially, not all the bodies were recovered, and those who did escape said something far worse than flames had spread through the corridors. Marla, a seasoned night nurse, transferred to Hollow Creek years later. She'd heard whispers of Room B13, a place scrubbed from all records, supposedly cursed, supposedly sealed. Then, one night during a thunderstorm, her monitor blinked with an alert: Room B13. Patient vitals unstable. She laughed it off at first. A glitch, a joke, but the alert repeated. And again. She checked with admin. They told her firmly that Room B13 doesn't exist, but curiosity is a dangerous thing. She followed the alert down into the service elevator. It groaned as it descended deeper than any level she'd worked. When it stopped, she found herself in a hallway she'd never seen. Charred walls, broken gurneys, fluorescent lights flickering like dying stars. She walked the corridor. Her footsteps echoed unnaturally, as if they weren't alone. Her radio crackled. A voice whispered, "Help me!" Then static. As she moved forward, the hallway grew colder. She passed an old nurse's station, long abandoned, where a blood-stained call bell still blinked. On the desk was a patient chart. It had her name. The door to B13 stood cracked open. Inside, the walls were black with soot. A rusty bed frame sat in the center, and behind it, a mirror, shattered. Written across the shards, "I never left." Marla stepped inside. Behind her, the door slammed shut. Her flashlight died. She turned, panicked, reaching for the handle. It was gone. Not just locked, gone. As if the door had never existed. She spun around, and the room had changed. The bed was now occupied. By her, eyes open, skin pale, mouth silently screaming. She backed away, only to hear dozens of whispers fill the air. "Marla, Marla, Marla." Hands reached from beneath the bed, from inside the walls, from the mirror. And then a figure emerged, charred, faceless, dragging an IV drip behind it. It pointed at her chest, and she felt her heart begin to slow. Security found the elevator stuck at B level, but there was no access below ground. No signs of life. Until 3:07 a.m. every week, the time Marla vanished, when the same alert pings. Room B13, vitals unstable. Some say Marla's still down there. Some say she's not alone. But one thing is certain: Room B13 wants more patients. St. Elora Psychiatric Hospital was once the crown jewel of post-war mental health reform, but it became something far darker. In 1978, Dr. Harold Varick took over the third wing, the isolation unit. He was known for experimental treatments, a genius to some, a monster to others. He believed mental illness was caused by spiritual parasites. He wasn't joking. He began isolating patients for weeks. No staff allowed inside his wing. Patients began to disappear from the records. Security guards reported chanting late at night, and odd symbols drawn in salt outside the locked doors. Then, on June 6th at 6:06 p.m., a nurse reported hearing screams echoing from the isolation wing. The doors, which required triple authentication, had opened on their own. When staff entered, they found every light shattered, blood smeared across the floor, and Dr. Varick standing in the middle of the main room, nude, eyes rolled back, speaking in a language no one recognized. He had carved a massive, demonic symbol into the floor using surgical scalpels. Around him, 11 patient files, and 11 empty wheelchairs. There were no bodies. He was institutionalized immediately. But here's the part that chills even the most skeptical minds. Over the next 40 years, 11 different patients, all born years after the incident, were admitted to St. Elora's and each went missing. Always from the same room. Always in June. One security camera caught footage in 1999 of a patient being wheeled by an unseen force. The wheels moved on their own. Another clip from 2008 shows the door to Varick's old office slowly opening, with his voice echoing inside. Even though he died in 1983, doctors dismissed it as artifacted sound, until a forensic audio expert matched it to tapes recorded during Varick's evaluation. Same inflection, same voice pattern. And then, there's the journal. A nurse cleaning out storage found it hidden in a vent in room 333, the room Varick used for cleansing. The journal had no cover. Inside were sketches of inhuman figures, rituals, and one repeating phrase scrolled over 100 times. "They come through me now." Several pages contained staff names, people who had never worked there until long after his death. In 2021, a paranormal research group snuck in to film a documentary. What they captured was never released publicly, but one investigator posted online that they'd heard scratching from inside the walls, followed by breathing, and then a whisper. "Harold is still practicing." A week later, that poster was found dead, body mutilated in a hotel bathtub in another state. The only clue: a salt circle around the body. Dr. Varick may be dead, but his rituals were never buried, and St. Elora still hosts his work. Some believe the building itself is now the vessel, and the next patient could be anyone. Mercy Hill Hospital is known for three things: its ancient architecture, its overcrowded ER, and room 606. It doesn't show up on the hospital's digital blueprint. Maintenance says the door doesn't lead anywhere, but nurses swear they hear screaming from behind it. Long, agonizing wails that chill the bones. The room is at the end of an unused wing. Always cold. Always locked. Jenny, a new intern, thought it was a prank. She laughed, picked the lock, and went inside. What she saw was impossible. Chains hung from the ceiling. The room pulsed with red light. Scratched messages covered the walls. Thousands of them. Names, dates, some from decades ago. And her own name, freshly carved. Dripping blood. She tried to scream. The door slammed shut. Her flashlight flickered. And in that brief second, she saw something in the corner. Twisted. Tall. Eyes glowing. Security cameras picked up static for 3 minutes. When they came back, she was gone. She was found hours later in the ER, standing silently in the hallway, covered in scratches. Her throat had been torn open from the inside, yet she was still breathing. Doctors couldn't explain it. She was catatonic, unresponsive. Later, when they reviewed the footage of room 606, they noticed something else. Her reflection still screaming in the window, even though she was no longer there. And every new intern who walks by sees something different in the reflection. A face from their past. A warning. Sometimes themselves. Room 606 has since been welded shut, but the screaming never stopped. And sometimes the reflection still moves, even when you don't. If you made it this far, thank you for surviving with us. Comment below which tale chilled you the most, and if you've ever had your own haunted hospital encounter. We're listening. Subscribe to Terror Tales, and remember, fear doesn't need a heartbeat. It only needs a hallway.